Okay, so before I talk about this port, I want to say that I'm a huge Gex fan, having played 3, 2, and 1 in that order. Obviously 1 I didn't enjoy as much as 2 and 3, and 2 being a game I used to speedrun in the past, and also the game that kickstarted this channel back in late 2021. So Gex is definitely a known character when it comes to the history of this channel, but something that I haven't done until very recently was playing the Game Boy Color version of 2, aka Enter the Gecko, expecting to enjoy a scaled down version of the game and be surprised by just how uncanny it would be to the home console version, but instead, I got met with one of the most mediocre ports of a beloved underrated classic, in my opinion of course. Obviously, since this is a Game Boy Color port of a PS1 and N64 title, a lot of things are different, mainly the jump from 3D to 2D, not just in terms of graphics, but also given the fact that it went from a 3D free roaming platformer to a 2D side-scrolling one, pretty much in the same vein as the first Gex game. Another very much expected change is the lack of voice lines from Gex, taking away his quirky, pop culture influenced personality, which is not that huge of a loss in the grand scheme of things, but it does make Gex a lot more plain and void of an identity than usual. But if you're one of the people who think his voice lines get annoying, and trust me, I feel you, then this change might suit you just well. But obviously, where this game should shine and thrive above all things is in the platforming aspect. And unfortunately, I feel this port of the game just does not do a good job at it. You see, when it comes to the PS1 and N64 versions of Enter the Gecko, even though the levels may suffer design-wise when it comes to them looking the same the entire time, and therefore the player getting potentially lost trying to look for a specific control, the platforming aspect does feel nice, with Gex having very responsive and satisfying controls, and with the player being able to actually see where they're going. The platforming is one of the reasons why I decided to speedrun this game, actually. But when it comes to the Game Boy Color version, it just feels so incredibly jarring and borderline frustrating to just get from point A to point B. Not only are you still suffering from the fact the entire level looks pretty much the same, to the point you could get lost, but there's also the fact you're unable to see where you're going most of the time, with this leading you to miss platforms, fall great heights so that you gotta go back all the way from where you fell, and in the worst case scenario, landing right next to an enemy that could lead to loss of health and eventually death. The controls themselves don't feel much nicer either, with the worst aspect in my opinion being the fact that there isn't a wrong command. Instead, what you do is build up momentum by walking in an open area and then start running. This aspect alone is incredibly frustrating, and even more when you try doing it in small platforms where there's essentially no way for you to build set momentum. But once you build up your momentum, you'll figure out easily the most effective strat when it comes to platforming in the game, which is by constantly jumping on your tail. Now, I haven't seen any speedruns of this, and Lord help anyone who even tries running this, but I'm sure this is a core mechanic when it comes to people attempting any category. And it wouldn't even be that bad if there weren't so many small platforms that you need to keep jumping in. But the thing is that this game is full of them, everywhere. You need to keep doing leaps of faith in order to not fall and redo big chunks of levels that you have to do in order to progress. It's just bad game design, honestly. I shit you not. Pretty much every level felt like a platforming nightmare, and if it wasn't for save states, I would have spent ages just trying to get a couple controls. And if that isn't a red flag, then I don't know what it is. Now, I gotta give credit where credit's due. And one of the redeeming aspects of this game is how they managed to get a lot of themes and enemies from the home console versions nailed down, even if it's in a different capacity. It is, after all, the reason why I praise ports of big games like Crash and Spyro. I just love when I can play something that resembles the main source, but has its identity of its own. And in that regard, I do feel like Gex on the Game Boy Color succeeds. Unfortunately, that is just one good thing over like 3 bad ones. Another aspect I do not appreciate about this game is the fact that some stuff is never explained, and you could feel stuck for a while before you figure it out, such as this one. I felt like I was trapped in the first section of the level Smell Racer, with no way to get out. until I put myself next to what looked like a normal ass wall and started just climbing it, out of nowhere. I feel like for that there should have been at least an indicator that you could climb that, like a sign or something. I'm not opposed to the idea of games having cryptic elements to them that you need to figure out. In fact, it's something I like about games like Zelda. But when it comes to a platformer as bare bones as this, I feel like this shouldn't have been something so difficult to figure out. The most annoying level I played, however, has to be Mao Zedong. What felt like a nice walk in the park in the home console version turned into hell. And that's just talking about the dragon mission. So for those unaware, there's a mission where you need to reach a dragon at the end of a level and kill it in order to retrieve a control. And this boss itself isn't hard to beat or reach in the home console version, but in this one the platforming is so incredibly stupid and the hitboxes are awful as well, having to spin the gong several times in order to activate it for some reason, and having to be careful of where you land almost every time you jump. It makes what should have been an enjoyable experience a lot more frustrating than it should be. And the dragon boss is awful as well. The little faith I had in it being as fun as it was in the home console version quickly faded away the moment I had to face it. Combine its already stupid hitbox and pattern of shooting you from both sides with Gex cheating mechanics, and also how baffling the canon is in this version, and you got easily one of the most annoying boss fights that shouldn't even be this annoying. The whole reason why this battle sucks is not so much because of the dragon itself as it is because of the mechanics surrounding it. It's truly disappointing. Aside from that, I don't think I can say a lot more. The Circuit Central level is fine. They kept the power-up intact, so that's at least a nice detail. Unfortunately, when combined with the platforming, it can also get jarring. And again, I understand this game tried, but just like the Game Boy Advance version of Pac-Man World, it just doesn't work. Needless to say, I did not beat this game, and honestly, unless I keep save-stating my way through it, I don't know if I ever will. I'm not trying to dogpile on this game either, because again, it does have some redeeming aspects, such as the themes being nailed down, and even Gex having a cool and effective design. It did the best it could, and that's admirable. But at the end of the day, I just don't think this is a good game. Is it decent? Maybe. But I would say if you wanna play a Gex game that is actually fun, playing one of the home console versions. I assure you that's infinitely more fun than this, as unfortunate as it sounds. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. I was thinking about making a video on this port for a hot minute because I felt like even though it's not an amazing game by any means whatsoever, as someone who enjoys a lot of Gex, it just felt right to talk about it at some point. If you wanna give it a go, feel free to, but just know it will get incredibly frustrating. But yeah, thanks for watching. Friendly reminder as always that I'm also on Twitch streaming almost daily. So if you wanna hang out and tell me I suck at video games, feel free to. And if you want to also support me and the channel, you can like and subscribe, and also consider showing support by giving me a little tip on coffee. Obviously this is always optional and very much appreciated, but never mandatory, but it does help me out a lot, as someone who has to work a full-time job while making this type of content. And with that said, I hope you have a good day and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.